Today I've been asked to talk to you guys sort of about, I guess, what I do and my general job and my day-to-day life here at Macquarie, where I've been and gone during my career here, and maybe about where I'm going as well. And I'm also going to give you a little mini lecture. Hopefully I'll get to it and I won't ramble on for too long, about coral reef, which is one of my areas of passion. I absolutely love reef and scuba diving as well, so I'll get to that. My talk today is stepping out of the lab coat, which is the drab old idea of science that a lot of people have, and into fins, so getting out there and really being amongst it. So I am, like I said, a scientific officer in the Department of Biological Sciences. It's quite a big department. There's quite a few scientific officers as well. I think there's about 25, 30 of us. And I specifically look after palaeobiology courses, but I'll get to that. I don't know hoping you guys can see these pictures as well. These are some of the things that I have done at work. So all these pictures are taken while I'm actually working. So you've got a picture of me here changing a tire on a four-wheel drive. So I've done some really awesome four-wheel drive courses. Scuba diving, actually that one's on holidays, I lie. Scuba diving for work, also being out on the reef for work, out in the Flinders Ranges on field work, and also this one's on Heron Island, which is one of my field trips. During the cyclone, mind you, last year, that was fun. But I'll get to all of those points later on. So I have been working here since 2010. Bit about my background. So as a kid, I had this game that my father bought for me, which was about paleontology, and you basically traveled around the world to all these different dig sites, and you got to dig up dinosaurs and use your jackhammer and your pick and your brush and dig out these cool fossils, and then you put them together and you could colour them in. It was a kid's game, right? I was about 6 or 7. I absolutely fell in love with this game, and I just played it constantly. So there I started to develop a bit of a passion for paleontology. And then, funnily enough, I lost it throughout high school, and I started getting really interested in archaeology, particularly Egyptology, so the study of ancient Egypt. Archaeology is the study of human remains in ancient culture, and also ancient history as well. I just absolutely loved those topics, and I did really well at them, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go to Egypt and I'm going to be an Egyptologist, and I'm going to work in this amazing museum. I'm going to be really cool and find awesome stuff. And I did my HSC. So I finished it in 2003, I think it was, and did ancient history. I also did biology because I was also quite interested in biology. French as well, just to throw that in there. And then the normal subjects. So I did pretty well at high school. I did enjoy it. So I got into the degree that I applied for, and I actually studied here at Macquarie. So I can't seem to get away from this place, but I love it here, so it doesn't matter. So I applied for a Bachelor of Arts combined with a Bachelor of Science, and I started in 2004, and I actually was going to major in museum studies. So it was this really cool combined degree where I could get that experience of sort of curating and working in a museum and traveling around looking at exhibitions. And I started in it, and I started doing some archaeology subjects, some ancient history subjects, and then, you know what, I sucked at it. I was really not very good at archaeology, and I thought, oh my gosh, this was my passion, this is exactly where I wanted to go, and all of a sudden I'm no good at it. And it kind of burst my bubble a little bit. So I thought, okay, I'll try something different. I started doing biology, and then picked up paleontology again. I was like, oh, this is just like the game that I played when I was 6, and fell in love with it all over again. And I started, I did all the paleontology subjects there were to do at Macquarie, and absolutely loved it. And here is evidence that I did graduate. That was in 2008, I think it was. So I completely changed my pathway, I guess. So, high school, I had this set idea of what I was going to do, and then got into uni and just didn't end up enjoying it. So Bachelor of Science is where I went, and I majored in paleontology. And I'm lucky enough to still have a job and to have a job in that area now as well. And so when I graduated, I was working admin in a hospital, and it was really boring and I wasn't really enjoying it very much. But my boss, so this big fella here, Glenn Brock, I have him to thank for my current position. He contacted me and said our scientific officer that we used to have is retiring and we need a new person in the job, and I think you and a whole pile of other people that had just graduated would be really good for it. So, okay, well, I've got nothing to lose, go ahead. So I applied and I interviewed and I got the job, and I haven't looked back since. It's an amazing job. So that started in 2010. Back then we were I was employed as part of the Palaeobiology group. Back then we were in the environmental life sciences, and then we moved to biology, so we are now officially part of the biology department. And so we went through the physical change. We had to move all our fossils, all our specimens, everything over to a new building and really try to integrate in the department. So that was initially what happened. So this is now going into actually what I do in my day-to-day job. So this is the stuff that when you think of a job in science that you might think about is sitting in the lab, in a lab coat. I guess as part of it, which is when I look after first year biology subjects, this is kind of what I do. And when I mean look after, I mean we provide technical support for the academics that teach these units. So we go into the labs and we set up the classes and we run the experiments beforehand so that it works for the students. So I'm not talking about lectures or tutorials or anything like that, not the actual teaching part, official teaching part, but we have prac classes, so the hands-on teaching of science that happens in a university. That's what I support. So we run around in these classes and make sure that everything's working and that the students are doing the right thing. So that's part of my time. A very small part of my time is stuck in these kind of labs. The rest of the time I'm helping with teaching paleobiology classes. And here at Macquarie we teach the history of life, which is a sort of intro subject to paleontology that goes through pretty much everything from the dawn of time up until now, and evolutionary changes along the way. There's one more in-depth unit, which is evolutionary paleontology, which is quite full on, which is at 300 level. I'm also helping to look after that. And then, so these are some of the specimens that we have. These are pretty cool. So this is our paleo teaching lab. And then I also help to look after reef evolution and dynamics, which is actually a kind of coral reef history. The other subject is reef evolution and dynamics, so it's actually based on Heron Island. So the students which is in the Great Barrier Reef. The students do a whole heap of lead-up study and assignments and stuff like that, and then we go to the reef and spend 9 days. Hard work, huh? So yeah, it's amazing. So I'll get to that in more detail later on anyway. Another thing I've been doing lately, which has been absolutely hilarious, is outreach with preschools and primary schools. And we've been taking sort of kids into the labs and leaf litter and looking at pond water and stuff like that under the microscopes and doing some really cool intro science with the younger kids. And I had this group of 4-year-olds, I think they were, came down from Gumnut Cottage, our preschool on campus. And we had a ball. I made this is my amazing drawing. Look at this, it's fantastic. Pin the tail on the dinosaur. I made that. They were actually pretty good at it. I was surprised. And I also made these kits, which were sort of nally bins filled with sand and had a whole heap of fossils and stuff in them. So they actually got to sit there with brushes and dig out the fossils, and they just thought that was the most amazing thing ever. So that's a little bit of a side thing, I guess, I do in my job. And because I love kids, I get involved with that kind of thing all the time. Fieldwork is another big part of my job here. This type of fieldwork is actually for undergrad student groups. So those units, paleo units that I was mentioning before, we have field trips associated with them. So these trips are are really to immerse the students fully in paleontology. You can't enjoy paleontology without getting out there, getting dirty, cracking open some rocks and seeing what you find, and then, you know, making interpretations about the fossils while you're there. You can't study paleo being stuck in a classroom. So this is a really fun part of my job as well that I love. And the top couple of pictures are from the Lower Hunter Valley up the Central Coast, where we go every year, actually going in October. And this one down the bottom is around Yass and the Southern Highlands. So these are fossil sites in New South Wales. And we're talking, you know, 400 million year old kind of fossil sites. You might not think that they're there, but they are. So we take the students to some of those. Another part, and I'm very lucky to be taken on this trip, so I get help with research field trips as well. So my boss, Glenn, that I showed you a picture of before, he studies Cambrian small shelly fossils. So we're talking tiny, tiny little different shells and hard parts of different animals that we actually don't really know what they are from the very, very dawns of time. So we're talking 550 million years ago. And he actually brought me along on one of the field trips, which was in 2012 in the Flinders Ranges. And that's me down the bottom leading the way. So that was really fun. Really good trip. So this is sort of part of my own personal time. I'm a scuba diver. I started diving in 2011, I think it was. I got my open water ticket. And all of these pictures are actually taken on holidays in Vanuatu, which is, I absolutely am in love with that place. I started with my open water ticket, which is obviously where you start, and then I got my advanced ticket in 2012, I think, and applied for a professional staff grant, so it's through Macquarie, to get my rescue ticket. And so you're sort of working up the ranks in diving. Rescue is the level where you're actually taught to save lives. If something happens under the water or at the surface, where you have maybe unresponsive divers, you have panic divers, something goes wrong on an getting out of a boat or something like that, that you know how to deal with that situation. Because I look after this trip that goes to Heron Island every year that I was mentioning, I felt that this was a very useful course to attend, because it would fully equip me to deal with any emergencies with my students when we're there. It was a full-on course. I absolutely loved it. It was very physically challenging and very demanding. But all these things that you see in these pictures, we had to learn how to do, and haul people up jetties and and deal with panicking people underwater and sort of mouth to mouth and everything. It was crazy, but I'm very, very happy to have done it. So getting back to Heron Island, this is some pictures from Heron. Heron Island is in the southern Great Barrier Reef, part of what's called the Capricorn Bunker. This is a picture from probably from a helicopter. So this is the channel, the jetty here that goes into the island. The research station is about here, which is where we stay. And around the back here is the resort. So this is all pristine, sort of, not mangrove, but bushland at this back part of the island. Takes about 15 minutes to walk around it. So it's very small, and it's part of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. So it's zoned out with scientific zones, pristine zones that you're not allowed to go in, things like that. So basically what they have at the research station is a lab, a couple of labs, seminar room, research labs. They have accommodation, kitchens. It's fully self-equipped. And these are some of my students in the lab one year. And we go up there for 9 days. So basically what we do is we go through a series of lectures. So they usually have around 2 lectures a day. And we also have practical sessions. So not only in the lab, but out on the reef, which is the best time ever. Some of the lectures that we have are touching on the basics of reef biology. So how reefs essentially work, the diversity, zonation on the reef. So different parts of the reef and how the diversity changes over those zones. Also how reefs form, the history of reefs from the very dawns of time through to now, and the major animals that have made up reefs from then to now, which has all changed. And we also cover a bit of information about different islands of the Great Barrier Reef as well. So part of that and learning about the biology and the zonation, stuff like that on the reef, the students then get to go out and see it. So we take them out to do things like transects, and these are photos of students doing a transect. So they take a big rope and they go from the beach all the way out, pretty much 200 meters, and we look under our feet at what's there and how it changes all the way out. So different amounts of sand coloured, there's different corals near the beach as opposed to all the way out near the rampart, different animals, all that sort of thing. So the students also do so many different things, food webs, and we also get to do recreational snorkels. So we go out on the boats off the edge. So amazing things. A couple of years ago, we were swimming with manta rays, and there's turtles and reef sharks and all sorts. It's just stunning. So you guys might not know that coral reef only actually makes up 0.2% of the world's oceans. So it's not a lot, but they are so invaluable that the diversity that's on a reef is something like 1 million different species that are on a reef. So there's huge caches of biodiversity. They also greatly protect our coastlines. If you think about where the reefs are, they're sort of along our coastlines. So it's protecting our coastlines from things like erosion. We also get a large income from coral reefs from tourism and from fishing as well. But coral reefs are being largely degraded now because of basically us. So the human impacts on coral reef is very sad. These are some of the statistics. So this is your little mini lecture about coral reefs now. Some of the statistics. So Australia and Papua New Guinea, considering we're actually not that bad, but we've lost 3% of our coral reef. 4% is critical, 10% is now threatened. The Persian Gulf, 70% of their reefs are gone because of us. There's also 12% that is threatened, 15% that is critical. So this is really sad statistics. Why does this happen? Overfishing is one of the main reasons. So things like little Nemos that you find in the pet shop, in people's aquariums, they're being overfished off the reef. A lot of tropical fish are being taken off the reef and shoved in a fish tank, including these little guys down here, which is called tridacna clams. So these are little bivalve clams. They're beautiful. You might have seen them if you've been scuba diving or snorkeling on the reefs. They're also used for food, so they're actually eaten. They're being greatly overfished. This stuff here is called caulerpa. This is a green algae, and it's actually used in salads. In a lot of Asian countries, they use it in salads. Caulerpa salad is very popular. So we're losing huge numbers of that as well. And turtles, people sell the shells and also eat the meat. Areas of the world that turtles are still eaten. So overfishing is a huge problem. It's not only stocking up people's aquariums, traditional medicine as well. A lot of Chinese medicines, they use a lot of reef animals. Like, I've got a fact here for you. 20 million seahorses were harvested from coral reefs in 1995 for traditional medicine. 20 million seahorses. Like, that's insane to me. So overfishing is one of the main problems on our reefs. Pollution is another big one. Pollution is coming from things like sewage runoff, agricultural runoff, industrial sewage that's just being pumped straight into our oceans. What happens is coral reefs require a certain amount of light and salinity and nutrients and all those sorts of things to grow, so they're very fragile. And if you shove all of a sudden all this sewage in, which is full of nutrients, it's not only going to smother the corals so they can't get enough light, but it's also going to increase algae growth and a whole lot of other animals that are overgrowing on the reef. So that's completely destroying areas of our coral reef area as well. So that is called eutrophication. What I was just talking about, that algae overgrowth and smothering of reefs is called eutrophication. So that's the impact of human pollution. Another big one is tourism. There's areas around the Persian Gulf as well that it directly correlates to resorts, and especially resorts with dive centres. So a lot of dive centres run what's called a DSD course, a Discover Scuba course. And it's basically, it's not your actual dive ticket, but it's an intro dive. So you have to do a couple of skills and then they take you on a play dive. But what happens the first time you scuba dive is your buoyancy is all over the place and you're not used to the feeling of being weightless. And so you're kind of flapping about and grabbing onto things and kicking up silt. And what happens is reefs are destroyed because people grab onto corals, it breaks the corals. They kick up the sediment, which covers the coral as well and blocks the light. And they also do stupid things like this, like stand on it. Tourism is a huge problem for our reefs, although the revenue from it is huge. So I think it's just an awareness. People need to be aware of what's around them when they're under the water. So there's various organisations now that have put together Save the Great Barrier Reef programs. Our current government is looking at proposing projects of dredging the Great Barrier Reef and laying what are they called, pipelines for Collison gas, and making new ports as well through the Great Barrier Reef. So if ever you see things like that, there's like petitions and stuff like that that you can join. It's a good project to get involved in and just support saving our Great Barrier Reef because it is a big part of Australia. So I think I'm pretty much done. That's my job all in all. As you can see, I ain't stuck in a lab all the time. I'm not wearing a lab coat. I absolutely love my job. I get to do so much all the time and, taken around Australia on these amazing places. So I'm very, very fortunate. I would encourage you guys to get into science. If you love it and you have a passion for it, it's a great area to get into, and there are some amazing opportunities out there as well. Working in a university is it's great. So go for it, guys. On my last slide, there is a link here to a video that we actually made on Heron Island two years ago. I think it was last year we made it, and it's sort of a mini documentary about the Heron Island trip that we do. So there's lots of footage of what the students do, lab time, projects, time on the reef. So if you guys want to have a look, it's about 20 minutes, so maybe grab a snack while you watch it. But it's a really cool little video and I'm in it, so go for it. Have a look. I think that's about it. If you guys have any questions for me, please feel free. I'm happy to answer questions. I don't have a PhD. I actually have no intention of doing a PhD. I did my bachelor's, and that's all I've done. I started a master's, but then got carried away with life and work and all sorts of things. I might go back to that later on. It was actually in forensic science, a little bit different, yeah. It's a wonderful way to get your research out there and really step into the field of academia, but it's not for everyone. And I am in an amazing job and have all sorts of opportunities to expand and grow and learn without needing those letters behind my name. So that's just my personal preference, but no, I don't have a PhD. I socialise with a lot of people from work because we have common interests. A lot of them are divers. My best friend is actually a PhD student here at Macquarie. So I guess my social life and work kind of merge a little bit, but I do it as a regular 9-to-5 job. I have my normal weekends. I have my normal social life outside of work. It's there are really busy times this semester, like right now is pretty crazy, where the students, the first 6 weeks are insane with the number of students that we have, but it doesn't stunt my social life at all. Yeah, it's all about finding that work social balance, I guess, and making sure that you do make time for activities outside of work. So that's good. I do. Yeah. Within the biology department, in the scientific officer role, so where my role, I think probably 70% are women. And there's a lot of female academics as well within our department, really highly respected female academics. There's a lot of women in my department, and they are very, very driven and very intelligent. When I was in the Flinders Ranges, 2012, whenever it was, we went to a site that was up in these hills in the middle of nowhere in South Australia, and it was an Ediacaran site. And if you guys don't know, the Ediacaran was a time period before the big dawn of multicellular animals. It's called the Cambrian explosion. I don't know if you've learnt about it, but it happened around 550 million years ago, and there was this big explosion of diversity amongst multicellular animals, where they started to develop hard parts, they started to become better preserved, and they started really appearing in the fossil record. Before that was a period called the Ediacaran, so we're talking a really, really, really long time ago. And the animals that were around then were these strange, blobby, kind of soft-bodied things that no one really knows what they are. And my boss does quite a bit of research into them, but we went to one of the sites and I actually found not something new, but I was really excited about it because it was so old and so amazing. But this thing called Aspidella, which is like it's like a holdfast. If you can imagine, the animal sort of suctioned onto the sediment kind of thing and then stuck up and filter fed in the water column. And I was finding them just under my feet as I was walking around. And to think about the age of the rocks that I was walking on, 560, 570 million years old, just absolutely blew me away. So I haven't found anything, crazy like new species of dinosaur or anything like that. But I have found some pretty cool stuff that is extremely old, which just, I can't fathom it. Like, you try to think about how long ago that was. I mean, we get carried away with 10 years, these are 500 million years. It's just amazing. So yeah, paleontology is really cool. I actually have been thinking about this, funnily enough, recently, and I've been thinking about the US. I don't know if it'll happen, but I don't know if you guys if anyone's ever been to Los Angeles, there is a place in Los Angeles called the La Brea Tar Pits, and it's in the middle of downtown LA, and basically it was maybe 40,000 years ago. It was just tar pits. That's all it was. It was just fields of tar, and the animals that were around that area got stuck in the tar, and because the tar is so viscous and so thick, they couldn't pull their limbs out of it, and so they've basically been sucked into these pits of tar, and they've been preserved there. And so this is in the middle of Los Angeles, right? All of a sudden this tar started bubbling up from under the ground, and paleontologists have come along and gone, what's that? And pulled out mammoths and smilodons, so saber-toothed cats, and dire wolves, and even one human. They found one human remains of a young girl. And there is so much still there that paleontologists have their work cut out for them for thousands of years. Like, they'll never get through it. That is somewhere that I feel like I would love to go and work. Whether there's jobs there or not, that's another thing. But I do, because I've been involved in paleo field trips and digs, and also preparation of fossils. I do prepare fossils as well. I feel like that's somewhere that I could go. And that's something that I could do. And just the kind of specimens that they have there is unbelievable. They have a wall of dire wolf skulls, and I think there's maybe 2,000 of them there. So these animals just got trapped in the tar, and that's it. They're really well preserved. So I think that's where I'd like to go. personally. The US has amazing fossil history, and also Alberta in Canada, they have this place called Dinosaur Provincial Park, and they've got all sorts of cool stuff there. So the US for a paleontologist is where you want to go. Thanks, guys.